This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we have as our guest tonight Mr. Bob Rogers, who is a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District of Alabama. Now, for those of you who don't know what the 2nd District is, it encompasses the entire river region, not entirely. Some of that East Montgomery is in the 3rd District with Congressman Mike Rogers, but it's mostly our viewing audience here on this show. It's the Talga, all of Elmore, a good bit of Montgomery, and it goes throughout the entire Wiregrass. It's the old 2nd District of Alabama, and Bob is running for the congressional seat currently held by incumbent Martha Roby. So Bob and I, the way we got to know each other, y'all, this is an interesting story. I was at my house in Troy, and Bob came by my house and knocked on the door and asked me to vote for him. Excuse me, Bob, that's a heck of a good way to meet somebody. Very impressive that someone running for Congress would knock on your door and ask you to vote for him. But tell folks why you're running for Congress.
Well, I would go back to the time when shortly after Obama got in office and we started working on that Affordable Care Act, as we know it now as Obamacare. And I worked primarily as an electrician. And so I'd be up on my ladder working and or painting or whatever I'm doing, because I also manage some apartments. And I'd be listening to a lot of talk radio, and I'm hearing all the stats coming out about this Affordable Care Act. Do we really need Affordable Care Act with the government oversight? And the stats were about 75% of the people did not even want government intervention on our health care. That they wanted to maintain private sector health care where you had a full confidentiality between the patient and the doctor. And as I continued listening, it seems like that every day government was making greater and greater strides towards passing this bill that the people does not want or do not want. And then when they passed it, with that smirk on his face, if you think about it, when he signed that legislation putting government over the doctors who give us our health care, he rolled us all the way back to the Revolutionary War. Is a virtual concession to the Revolutionary War at that point, because you've got government entering our veins through an IV if you have to go in for an outpatient procedure or whatever. It's that kind of a thing when you see the encroachment of government in our lives, whether it be the health care, whether it be over-taxation, whether it be over-regulation, things of this nature, that it really starts to get our ire up. And if we, the people, don't stand and do something about it, instead of sitting around our respective homes, tables, and talking with our church groups, and we get into a political discussion and we all get upset, but nothing seems to get done, and we all shake hands, we feel better, we vented, but nothing gets done. So that's one of the reasons I've decided it's time for me to shell out some cash, and I'm going to do something about it.
Well, are you enjoying campaigning?
I very much enjoy it.
I can tell you, okay, knocking on my house there in Troy, Alabama.
Totally sporadic. I had no idea you lived there.
I love it. And, I love it. And we met that day, and he was campaigning for Congress door to door. And Bob, at what point did you decide to run for Congress? Like 6 months ago, a year or so?
Well, I would have to say Donald Trump has been a factor in it. I mean, I kind of toyed with the idea since Martha Roby ran and that debate with Bobby Bright. And by the way, I mentioned Bobby Bright, but I want to explicitly commend him for voting against Obamacare. You know, he was in office at the time. I just wanted to get that in there.
Which was tough because he was a Democrat.
That's right.
I'm sure Obama really prevailed.
But I commend him for that. But anyway, I kind of followed Martha's career up there in Washington and I've called her office a few times, this, that, and the other. But when they start talking about gun control again, and they're continuing with their ratchet down of their encroachment into our lives as we the people. And when I'm a member of we the people, I start to get upset because my Constitution tells me that the government they derive their power from the governed, the consent of the governed. That's you and me. That's we the people. And if we don't get back on top of controlling government, then they will encroach. They will continue to take guns. They will do it just like they did Affordable Care Act. Now, when they take our guns, they're not worried about the children in Sandy Hook. They're not worried about the children in Newtown and all these terrible things, true, that have happened. But it's not the gun that killed the kids. It was the idiot behind the gun that killed those children. Poor children up there. And it was a terrible situation. But things like this are going to continue to happen. And the only way to control something like that is to have a good guy on site with a gun that is trained and ready to use it as needed to thwart such behavior. But now I can get off on a tangent now. We'll take off and go on and on. But
Bob, let me ask you this question. You talking about Obamacare and Second Amendment. I assume Martha Roby voted against those too. How would you be different than you and the lady Becky Garrison who are running against Martha Roby? I mean, Martha Roby's not a flaming liberal by any means, is she? I wouldn't think. I mean, she's not. I haven't followed her voting record, but tell me specifically how you see different in any votes you would cast.
Well, I've been an NRA member for a long time, and I see that she's probably a lifetime member. That's okay. Fact is, as a candidate, I got a questionnaire to fill out, a survey to fill out from the NRA. And I did a paragraph before I did it, and I put it on my Facebook page. And I wanted the people to understand, the people who follow me on my page, that when I approached this survey for the NRA and dealing with the Second Amendment, I approach it with the commitment that we shall not change one dot or iota in that Second Amendment. It's there for a reason. And even though it says a well-regulated militia, as far as it pertains to the actual weapons, we're supposed to be able to have weapons. You know, that's our permit, actually, to keep and bear arms. But when I approach that survey, I'm doing it with the utmost concern that we change nothing and that we protect it so that the last four words of the Second Amendment shall prevail, and that is, shall not be infringed. And to even go into the realm of discussing gun control, the title gun control itself gives inference to an infringement of the Second Amendment. I don't want to talk about gun control. It's there. It's my right as a citizen, and you need to leave my right alone.
What about, back to my question, though, she probably would vote the same way you do in the NRA. What is it for the speaker, or what would you vote differently? I mean, how would you be different than Martha Roby?
My concern is I'd be more assertive in Congress and stand up more to these people that try to get you to bend and go their way. Working 30 years in law enforcement, especially with convicts in the prison system, you're going to have a game come at you every day, numerous times. That somebody's bringing something at you. They want to get you to do this and see if you'll bend the rules, and come on, do this, do that, and the other. And you just have to stick to the book and say, you know, I'm enjoying this conversation. My first answer was no. And if you want to continue talking, I've got till 8 o'clock, you know, at the end of the shift. But, you know, are you lonely? You know, do you need some friends? I'm not the one. My answer is no, you know. And you cannot give place to the devil. You cannot give place to the devil. Sometimes it's time to throw these people out that are in the way of our furtherance of conservatism. You know, to make an analogy there, a lot of times I am Christian, not that that's a prerequisite for being in Congress, But I know there's a lot of people who agree with me that you need to have Judeo-Christian fundamentals in place. We need to get back to the basics that made this country so great in the first place. And then, of course, when you get back to the basics, Judeo-Christian fundamentals, Christ said to hang all the law on one word, and that is love. And from love, you get mutual respect, and then the golden rule. If we have that, we can take care of a lot of things, like the Ferguson issue, the Baltimore issue. Mutual respect for life and each other, regardless of color, race, sex. I mentioned Christ. At one time, Christ himself became so angry that he, I think the Bible says, cast out the money changers out of the temple. Well, it's time we started casting out some non-American factions in this country if we're going to save it and get back to the Constitution as we know it without changing it.
Bob, you've campaigned I know Troy. Where else have you campaigned? You've been doing some stuff in Elba and Coffee County, haven't you?
Right. I've been down in Elba here quite a bit. Well, they've had a lot of flood damage down there. And I had been down in that area, down there, Highway 125. I have some relatives that live down in that area. And, of course, I have some good following down there.
125?
125 is the highway that goes all the way into Pike County.
Yeah.
Comes out, goes into Coffee. Over there, the Hall Hill area,
Yeah.
and goes on into Tarentum.
Yeah.
And
who are your relatives down there in that part of the country?
Oh, you got a bunch of folks down there. Got folks that are Mr. Green, Larry Green down in that area. I just put up a sign in his yard the other day, and that's just to name a few. They got a nice little tanning salon that's coming in across the road there. Of course, that it used to be very much rural, but it's gradually starting to increase with commerce. And
Everybody down there works at Rucker. A lot of them do.
Just
a lot of them work at Rucker. When I was growing up, Rucker and Dorsey Trailers, everybody worked those two places in Elba. Dorsey's gone now. Bob, talking about that area, it is a pretty highly populated area. But the reason I bring up the Rucker thing, the importance of military to the 2nd District, I would dare say, makes whoever serves in Congress, the most important thing they do is look after farmers and military. When you put the Maxwell Gunner in effect here in the river region and the Fort Rucker influence in the wiregrass, it's the most important thing a congressman do, is take care of that two things. Funny, I was sitting here visiting with Todd Strange, who's the mayor of Montgomery, on this show, probably a year or two ago now, and I happened to say to him, I said, Todd, I bet your city's been hurt by the downturn with all the state employees, assuming, like I think a lot of people do, that state government was the largest employer in Montgomery. I always assume that, because the capital's here and all the state workers live here. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And he says, no, it has affected us, but it hasn't been as devastating as you might think. And he picked up that I thought it was the largest employer. He says, it's not our largest employer. I said, was Hyundai gotten bigger than state government out in Montgomery? He says, no, it's Maxwell Gunner. Maxwell Gunner is the largest employer in Montgomery in the river region. And not only that, Bob, but a lot of retired military people retire here in this area. They live here, their last time in the military is here. They like the climate, they decide to stay here, which makes Montgomery a big retirement community for military people. As a member of Congress, I would assume you would try to build armed services and agriculture.
Definitely.
You would ask for those two assignments. Now, what would you do different than what Roby's done as far as protecting Maxwell Gunner and Rucker, which is
She's done a fairly good job with that, I'd have to say. But there was one thing that I got from her office. It was an indication of appropriations, various amounts of money going out for different things. And one of the items that really caught my eye that made me wonder about it, and that was $33 million going towards the renovation of schools on bases. And I wondered about that because to me, it would seem to me to be beneficial for the children on bases, except maybe daycare, you know, the little K through 3 or something like that maybe. But I feel like that might need to have a looking into. $33 million is a lot of money to spend on schools, renovation of schools on bases. Why can't they go to public schooling like any other child? Now, if they want them to go to a private parochial or whatever, that's up to them, of course. That's an individual preference. But it seemed like an awful lot of money to go out to the bases for renovation on schools. Mm-hmm. Now, this is not, I'm not talking about officer training or any type of military
school
type
children.
Schools. We're talking about the children of those adults present there on the base. That just made me wonder. It seemed like an awful lot of money going for that.
You live here in Montgomery, don't you?
Yes.
Have since 1977?
Yes.
That's almost 40 years.
Yeah, in and around the area.
Yeah. But in the river region, probably.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this. In your neighbors and where you live here in Montgomery, a lot of them retired state employees or active state employees? Or
quite a few. Quite a few, yeah.
What about as far as, and you work for the state as a corrections officer.
Right.
What about military? Do you see a lot of military too?
Quite a few, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of folks that settle here that are.
So what I was saying made sense. Yeah.
Right.
But now, let me ask you this question. The one thing I've picked up from you, and this is, maybe I'm more pragmatic than some other people because I was in it a long time. Old Sam Rayburn, the old Speaker of the House from Texas, used to make a statement. In order to get along, in order to get along, you got to go along. He'd pull a young congressman aside and say, now, you know, he told Bob Jones, who was a congressman from the Tennessee Valley, who became a very, very powerful congressman. He said, now, Bob, you sit over there for at least 2 terms. You don't say a word. You don't go to the microphone. You don't say one word. You follow my lead, and I'll take you to the Board of Education meeting. He had a Board of Education meeting, Bob. You know that's what they were doing? They had a little cubbyhole in the Capitol, an old dilapidated office in the basement of the Capitol, and Mr. Sam would sit there and drink bourbon and branch water starting at 2 o'clock every afternoon. He'd adjourn Congress and knew where he was going. He wasn't about that tall. He said, now, boys, we're going to go into have a Board of Education meeting. And he had a sign over that old door and then in his basement office, and he would invite a favored young congressman if he was trying to tutor him and mentor him. He said, now getting an invitation to the Board of Education meeting was important during that time. Both you and Becky Garrison have indicated to me you would not have voted for the Speaker. Maybe you're talking about Bonner. What was the other guy's name? John. How do you pronounce his name?
John Boehner.
Boehner, yeah. John Boehner. But now, if he's going to be elected Speaker, and he's a Republican, he's going to win anyway. What does that do? I mean, did that hurt you? I mean, you see what I'm talking about? So you ain't been around politics much as I have. Right. I'm a little more pragmatic. You know, I think if it was me, I'd almost say, well, you know, I may not like Boehner, I may not like Ryan, but he's going to win, and I don't want to be sitting over there and time for committee appointments to come, and I ain't going to get on the Armed Service Committee, and they're going to take it out. So have you ever thought about that aspect?
Right. Of course, I've never been up there. I'm a non-politician. Yeah. And in a lot of ways, that's a good thing. But as far as having specific knowledge of the inner workings of Congress, of course, I'm not there. And I'm only a layperson. I have a layperson's view. I only know what our big 3 news media will allow us to know. But from what I can see, something's wrong. And I've got one avenue of relief for that. And this may take I don't know if it would take a constitutional amendment or what. But I do know one thing. As an electrical contractor, if I'm going to do a job for you, let's say you want me to put in 5 lights in a receptacle in your addition in the back room and behind your house or something like that, just for example. And so I give you a price, you like it, you sign the proposal, we have a contract, and I start work. And you're out doing another show. Okay, so then when you come home and Mr. Bob is supposed to be through with the work, and you see 3 light fixtures and a receptacle that doesn't work, and yet Bob's got his hand out wanting his money, something's got to give at that point, because we contracted 5 lights and a working receptacle, hopefully. You didn't want a dummy receptacle. And so we immediately need to go back to the page and say, let's negotiate this price, or else finish your work, let's get it done right before the money changes hands. My point is this: when we elect Martha Roby, when we elect Bobby Bright, when we elect Bill Dickinson, whomever, they're going up there and they become a federal employee on the federal payroll, okay? There at that point, they're dissected from the people who sent them to do the work for them. Now, it may be constitutional that they have to be kind of dissected, or they have to move at least to the federal area, to Washington, D.C. But we, the people, back here in District 2, we need to form a committee. 1 person from each county, let's say. They can elect their own chairperson. As a, for the lack of a better term, call it an oversight committee for District 2. So when Bob Rogers is elected to go to Congress, he's not paid by the federal government. He has to worry about his check. He has to worry about his money, because he's working for those people back in Alabama. That's where he should get his paycheck, from the people who sent him to do the job for them. You know, and that is one big fallacy that's happening, is that as soon as someone is elected to Congress, they say, wow, I'm glad that's over with. Now we can stop all the campaign, let's kick back, draw the check, $174,000 every year. I'm sure there's some overhead, but that's too much money to just let somebody go scot-free and spend as they wish and vote as they wish with no oversight. There needs to be a way to bring that person back and say, hey, Miss Martha, we don't like the way you voted on this one particular bill. We need to have a hearing. We're going to have a little hearing, discuss the matter and discuss your performance. We might need to have a recall. We might need to adjust your salary. Now, if those kind of things take place, that will get the attention of those money-hungry folks up in Washington. Don't you think?
I hadn't thought about it. It's a novel approach. I hadn't thought about how, whether some districts couldn't pay their congressmen. Some districts are very impoverished, and so I don't know if that would work or not.
Well, I mean, we have money right now going through our tax system. We have money going appropriated, and it's going to end up in Washington, of course. That would have to be adjusted. So that money, a portion of that money, would stay in District 2 or stay in the state of Alabama if they wanted to make it a state agency that would handle all of the districts in the state. I don't know, whichever way, but it seems to me the first place to start is once they leave Alabama, they forget Alabama.
Have you been to all the counties in the district and campaigned all of them?
I've been pretty much all of them. I've been down in Crenshaw and over to Conecuh, down through Repton. I mentioned Repton the other day on the radio, and I thought I was going to get cussed out.
Why?
But because I mentioned some place that this radio personality had relatives with before. I'm not going to mention his name because he doesn't deserve the airtime. But
he didn't like Repton?
Well, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, he had something funny to say about when I mentioned Repton. It was just by choice. I pulled the name Repton out. But all the way down to Wing and over to Florala. I've been through Florala.
Andalusia.
And Andalusia. Yeah, been down to the Hart's Grocery. And do a lot of politicking down there at Hart's Grocery. Yeah, I've been through Dothan and went to the Peanut Festival.
Did you?
And I talked with a lot of folks down there during that festival.
Let you be in the parade or anything?
No, I wasn't in the parade. Well, they shut it down for a while. Because of the rain. They had a lot of rain.
I didn't know. They had a lot of rain.
They shut it down, a temporary shutdown, and they opened it back up on a Sunday, and I was down there that afternoon. I talked with a lot of folks and the peanut farmers down there. And they were not too happy with our existing representation.
Why was she not voting good on the peanut program?
I'm thinking that more or less there was a running joke that she didn't know whether a peanut grew in the ground or on the bush, and that was their get up. I'm sure she knows, better than that. I don't know. I don't know her that well. But anyway, that was
Peanut
the
farming
going
is
joke.
important in that wiregrass. You're not as important as it used to be, though. Medical care is the biggest employer in Dothan now.
Right.
Those two hospitals have the most employees.
Well, those peanut farmers were glad to know I was running.
Uh-huh.
And they would extend an arm of handshake. And so I told them, I said, keep me in mind on March 1 primary.
It's right around the corner, too.
That's right.
I mean, we're right here on it.
Mm-hmm.
We got an early primary because the presidential race. You glad we had a presidential race coming in Alabama? It's made it early for you. It's brought more attention to this race, too.
Right.
Well, if it was just the regular races like your race, the congressional races, and Shelby's race. And
Isn't it amazing how Donald Trump has fully energized the playing field?
It's
on
unbelievable.
the political playing field. And where at one time I was kind of looking at Christie. Christie looked good to me. Rubio looked good to me. And, if Bush, I didn't know about a third Bush, but, if he's the one, I'd have to go with him. But, when Trump took the stage, the proverbial stage, and you stand all the rest of them next to him, they all look like choir boys, to the point that it would be hard for me to vote for anyone but Trump if we had the election today.
He's going to do well in Alabama. I think he probably carries New Hampshire and South Carolina.
Right. Well, he struck a nerve with the voters. I mean, this is what's wrong with our country and the Syrian refugees. We don't need them. He made a stand, and it's time somebody did make a stand. When you have, this is another important point I would like to make. We have so many people encroaching into this country, let alone our own government trying to encroach into our lives. We need to be worried about these non-American, if you will, factions coming into our country. Now, if it's these people that come from Mexico, they're true Mexicans, most of those people like to work. I'm tapping into a stereotype here. They're family-oriented, they're workers, they're hard workers, they're going to work. That's the kind of people we need in this country. Now, I'm not saying give them amnesty, but I think we need to at least give them some kind of preference. I don't know how to do it and be fair. Mm-hmm. But the worry is how many of those so-called Mexicans and Christians were pseudo-Christians and actually Islamic jihadists coming over here to wait for the right time for a synchronized assault on about 10 of our major countries. I don't think it would bring us to our knees, but it would shut us down for a while.
Sure would. Well, Bob, I tell you what, it's gone by fast. Our time's up. Goes by in a hurry, doesn't it?
Well, I'd be glad to come back and talk again. I enjoyed it.
We'd love to have you. We appreciate Bob Rogers being our guest tonight. Bob Rogers is a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District of Alabama.